You're listening to the Culture Junkie podcast, where we go beyond the surface of pop culture.
I'm Keith.
And I'm Xandra. Together, we dive into the craft process and passion that drive today's creators. This is the Culture Junkie podcast.
Hello, and here we are today with my friend, a very old friend. I won't say how old he is, Mike Ogrodnik. Mike Ogrodnik is the principal at Ogrodnik Art, and they blend public art education and community engagement through Ogrodnik Art. He's a thoughtful and layered guy, and I'm going to ask some questions to uncover his artistic journey. I know him as a musician, and you can tell he's a musician on account of the guitars behind him. But hey, Mike, how are you doing?
Very, very good, Keith. It's good to talk to you.
Yeah,
as always. As
always. Listen, it's always great to catch up with you. You know, known you for, I would say, 45 to 47 years, you know, and it's always like high school again when we talk.
It was the pre-Mulrooney years, I think we met.
The pre-Mulrooney years. Yeah, I'd say the end of the first Trudeau.
Yep.
Right? You know, anyway. So listen, like I said, I know you as a musician, you're a great musician, you play the bass, play the guitar, produce music, but, you know, from the time we were kids, what got you into the art and mural business?
Well, the art side of it was something that I was always interested in from a very, very young age. My first pass at university, I wasn't really paying attention to my brain. And then when I went back, I realized that it was going to be art that I needed to pursue. That was the thing that I enjoyed. Art history, painting, drawing, creating of any kind.
Awesome.
And it's always stuck with me.
So was there a pivotal moment with a mentor or something that shaped your artistic style and direction? Because I know you said it was this when you went back to school that you decided to focus on art.
It was something that was always part of my upbringing, in the sense that my mother was very, very creative. Growing up with friends around the corner, the Hoffords, to drop a name, promoted the idea of creative exploration. It felt at home in my mind to pursue it, but it took a little bit of time to really think this is what I should pursue. And it ultimately led into my teaching career, which was where I could be as creative as I wanted.
Isn't it interesting that the Hoffords inspired so many of us to feel it was okay to pursue art? You know, Paul was the first person I knew who was like a musician and didn't think it was weird that kids wanted to be musicians. Like my parents wanted me to go to school and get a job, you know, and the Hoffords went to school, got jobs, but they were musicians.
Yeah, absolutely. For the most part, we grow up and parents, they want the best for their children, and they steer them, not that they steer them, but there's the safe careers or the perceived safe careers. And the arts is usually not anywhere close to the top of that list. Yet we're all artists. We're all creatives. I run into teachers when I'm painting murals and they go, "Oh, I can't paint," or "Oh, I can't draw." And my first response is, well, you just had lousy teachers. You got that taken out of you.
Yeah.
Human beings love that stuff. They love to dream. They love to imagine. And they appreciate it in other ways and think that they can't do it. It's very wrong.
Oh, so what drew you to painting in schools and painting murals specifically?
Ugly architecture. The schools are notoriously some of the most depressing forms of architecture. And pretty much from the time I started teaching, with the support of principals, my students and I always painted the classrooms. We painted curriculum concepts and ideas on the walls, basically sometimes filtered out into the hallways. So that was always part of.
That's amazing. So describe a mural project of yours that was transformative, that really spoke to you.
I'm going to have to say the first one.
Okay.
In the sense of Wall Trips, the company. I had retired from teaching in June of 2018. Aspects of the politics of school were things I could no longer really swallow. My mom was older, she needed help, and I thought this seems like a good time. And then when she passed, a teacher friend of mine who had become a principal asked if I would come and paint some murals in her school, just for something to do. And I jumped at it, and she encouraged me to become a vendor and try this entrepreneurial side of the arts, which was never anything that I would even have considered. And she did the encouraging. And that mural stands out for me as a turning point in my post. I don't like the word retirement, but in this phase of where I'm at.
Yeah. So do you involve the students or the educators in the creative process when you're doing your stuff?
Part of my pitch when I come in is that because I am still a certified teacher, the school immediately gets an in-house art teacher for any teacher that wants me to come in to do classes. I encourage teachers to bring their students down and sit in the hall while I'm painting. We'll talk about art, we'll talk about school, whatever they want to talk about. And then depending on the mural and depending on the grades, I always try to get staff to add a little bit of color and students.
There you go. So might be acting as a little bit of a counselor as well, it sounds like.
Well, you come at teaching when you're outside of it with a slightly different perspective. You don't have to, teachers on a regular day are looking forward to Friday, or there's something going on or whatever. And to step back and realize what an unbelievably privileged, fabulous job, career, vocation, calling, whatever you want to call it. Teaching is the best.
That's lovely to hear somebody actually enthusiastic about teaching. It's
I
really cool.
love teaching.
Yeah. So how do you choose the themes and imagery for the stuff that you're doing in each specific school?
My goal is always to try to encourage curriculum-based murals.
Okay.
So I've done murals on Earth systems, the center of the Earth up through the layers, and they'll get labeled. I've done them on mathematical equations, on science, because I like the idea that when they're walking through the halls, they're seeing what is part of the curriculum of the school. I can't stand when a teacher just gives a student a handout and you have to fill in the words, that kind of stuff. And I'd rather it on the wall for them to see it.
So you see the murals as an educational tool, kind of anchoring, or is it something else entirely? Am I
No,
getting
no,
it?
no. I try wherever possible when principals are supporting the idea that I'm still teacher first and mural painter second. I'm not going to come into your school and if you want "have a nice day" written on your wall, which is a beautiful sentiment, I think the students should get something a little bit more little meaty.
Someone else to paint "Have a nice day."
I'm not the "have a nice day" guy, although I am.
Okay, so what has this taught you about yourself as an artist?
Well, what can I tell you?
I don't know. It sounds to me like you have to be really adaptable. Despite the fact that you have the parameters in which you work and with the kids and that, but like you said, you don't want to be typing, writing "Have a nice day" on the wall and having like smiley faces. So how much of you do you put into this stuff?
More and more, I'm discovering that I'm giving as much of myself to these projects in the same way that I did when I was teaching. My
Okay.
my teaching style was to see the students as complete equals. My message was always, I've walked a few more miles than you have, so I can give you a little bit of information about what lies ahead and and sort of translate it like that. I gave my students a lot of freedom. My classroom, the only rule that I had, despite the list of rules that were posted, my only rule was attempt to be as good as you can be. And if you can do that, um, the other normal things that happen in school, you try to.
Yeah. Okay. So we grew up in North York. We grew up in let's just say Bathurst and Lawrence. That was our neighborhood.
Yeah.
Has that aspect of Toronto and Toronto in general played a part in the way, I don't know, the way you taught, the way you teach art, does it come into it at all? Our learned growing up experience.
I think of the few teachers that left an inspirational mark throughout the years. And then I think of teachers that in hindsight, or maybe even at those when I was still in school, there was a critique of their methodology. Things were very different. It was very teacher centric. It was all mostly
Yeah.
rote. But there was every once in a while, there was a teacher who sparked an interest. And I thought those sorts of approaches I found them inspiring. In general, living where we grew up, we lived in a little bit of a cocoon, kind of outside of the real world.
Yeah.
It was, our relative little environment. So I suppose that played a role. It must have. It allowed me to feel, I think, safe
Yeah,
on some levels. Whatever risks we took, whatever creativity we wanted to explore, there was no great opposition.
right. So you found that I guess that would be comforting. You kind of a safety net, eh?
It was totally a safety net.
Yeah. It's funny. I never felt that way about it. At the time, I thought, oh,
No, definitely not at the time.
especially, when you're 17, you're crazy, there's hormones, there's everything. And I didn't understand how comfortable I was in that situation until I moved. Don't know if you remember, I moved in grade 12, but I kept going to Fleming, right? That was our
Hmm.
high school. But I lived in a different neighborhood and
Yeah,
I went back. And when you live somewhere else, you go, wow, this is really a safe environment compared to what other places are. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
I guess that would be reflective in your art. So what's next in your artistic journey? What are you going to do from here?
I'm still really, really excited about every mural project. I'm in the process of a mural project right now, and I'm at a crossroads with the business side of things. There's opportunities to try to grow this,
Hmm.
and that's not really my wheelhouse. I look to inspiration when I think in those terms. I look to you. I look to a dear friend of ours who's no longer with us, Leslie
Us.
Zuloff, and I always admired that bravery that, even when we talked about the neighborhood, even going into teaching, that's a safe bubble where you can explore. It's almost an extension of the neighborhood
Almost.
in a sense. And now that I'm a freelance artist, you start to discover that you are the complete vehicle of your successes or your failures. And I've had a really good run. Right now, I'm working on my 94th mural since I started
That's
doing this.
amazing. That's amazing.
It blows my mind.
Yeah.
It totally blows my mind. So part of me is thinking about really, really expanding it. I have a few former students that are artists, and I can envision exploring this on a larger scale. But then on the other hand, part of me really wants to consider stepping back a little bit because I miss doing art exclusively for me. The murals, themes recur. I've done probably 7 or 8 world maps or solar systems.
Yeah. It's,
And you know what? It's like if you're in a band and you're on tour, you got to play the hits.
that's it. Well, that's funny you say that. So if you got to collaborate with anybody, would there anybody be on your bucket list to collaborate on a big mural?
With friends or
Somebody you
some.
know, somebody you don't know, anyone.
Absolutely. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. The Hoffords, getting back to the Hoffords,
Yeah.
our good friend David.
Mhm.
In high school, David and I had a sort of mini company called Dam Productions,
I
Dave and
see.
Mike. And David is a big fan of doing figurative drawings. He loves, that sort of stuff. That's not
Mhm.
really my favorite thing. And we've collaborated on some paintings before, but to do a large wall unit or a large wall mural, I think would be really,
Yeah,
really
that would
fun.
be cool. So anyway, you're talking about music. You got guitars hung up. I can see a mixing board behind you. What's new with music? What are you doing these days?
The last project happened this summer, which was the most fun we've had musically in the longest time. Years ago, in the days when we had bands, you remember,
Sure.
our band was called The Obs. And we recorded a bunch of songs then, and we played a bunch of songs and played a couple of shows in different clubs in the city when we were kids. And back in June, I think it was, David's brother Brian came into town and we knew we were going to jam and play Yob songs. And then the idea came, well, let's at least record the jam. And then it went a little bit further. David's dad came, he brought some little recording
Doohickey?
magic box,
Yeah.
whatever it was. So we had bass, drums, and guitar. And then we thought, well, let's see if we can maybe add a little bit of an extra guitar or mix it or whatever. And fast forward, we spent maybe 35 hours in a recording studio over the course of the summer massaging these songs. And we had the best time.
Mm.
So musically, the goal now is to record the rest of the Ob songs
Awesome.
and put out an album.
Why not? Of course.
Exactly.
Isn't it
Why not?
interesting though? We go from a point where we're kids and we're doing this kind of thing, and 45, 50 years later, it's still an interest. You still get that same kind of rush from doing that stuff, eh?
It's fantastic.
Yeah,
One of my joys in teaching was you would see a class of students, and any one of those students had the potential to do anything that you ever read about in a history book or cheered on a screen or heard about. You just never know.
that's it.
Yeah.
You never know what'll inspire them, and it could have been you. And next thing you know, they'll be famous, and you'll be going, "I knew him when he was one of my students." Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Or hopefully at least happy and pursuing
Exactly.
grades.
Exactly. I wonder if Mrs. Zanina knew that we'd still be playing music in our 60s.
I think there was probably a part of her that hoped,
Yeah. Yeah, I think
that
so.
hoped.
I think so. Listen, Mike, this has been great. Thanks for taking the time to come talk to me.
My
You know what?
absolute pleasure.
And anytime you want to come on and talk about anything else, anything that inspires you, we'd be pleased to have you on.
I'm sure between the two of us, there is no shortage of things that we could chew over.
Exactly. Anyway, Mike Ogrodnik, thanks very much. We'll talk soon.
My pleasure. Peace to you all.